Have you ever felt like a man was completely into you one moment and then out of nowhere, something shifted? You didn't change your looks. You didn't say anything dramatic, but suddenly he's distant, his messages slow down, and his attention drifts. It's not a coincidence, and it's not your fault. Here's the truth. There are certain habits women develop, often from trying to be kind, loving, or good enough, that subtly destroy the value they hold in a man's eyes. These habits don't scream, "I'm desperate," but they quietly whisper it, and men pick up on it instantly. This video isn't about playing games. It's about waking up to the silent behaviors that cost you your power, your worth, your edge. Because let's be honest, you weren't born to shrink for anyone's comfort. You weren't made to be chosen. You were made to choose. And that starts by recognizing the habits that chip away at how he sees you and how you see yourself. I'm going to walk you through the 4 most common and destructive behaviors women fall into, often without even realizing it. And I'm going to show you how to break free from each one. This isn't just about impressing a man, it's about reclaiming your emotional authority and showing up as the woman who commands respect, desire, and deep emotional connection. If you've ever wondered what changed, this video is your answer. Let's begin. Let's start with a habit that seems polite, humble, even thoughtful, but is actually one of the fastest ways to lower your perceived value in a man's eyes: over-apologizing and shrinking yourself. No, I get it. You've been taught that being too much makes people uncomfortable. That if you speak too boldly, ask for too much, or take up too much space, you risk being labeled dramatic, needy, or difficult. So somewhere along the way, you started to shrink. You apologize for how you feel, for asking questions, for setting boundaries. Sometimes you even apologize for simply existing in your full expression. It can sound like, "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to bother you. Sorry, I just thought maybe. Sorry if I'm being annoying. Sorry for texting again." Each of those tiny apologies chips away at your self-assurance, and more importantly, it signals to him that you don't fully believe in your right to be heard, seen, or respected. Let's be real. Men don't fall in love with women who walk on eggshells. They fall in love with women who stand in their truth, who speak with calm confidence, who own their voice without flinching. When you over-apologize, you communicate self-doubt, even when you don't mean to. And self-doubt isn't attractive. It creates a dynamic where you start seeking permission for your needs instead of expecting respect for them. But here's the deeper issue. This habit doesn't usually come from insecurity. It comes from conditioning. Society teaches women from a young age to be pleasing, to smooth over discomfort, to shrink so others can shine. You may have learned to read a room before you read your own emotions, to dim your light so others don't feel intimidated, and to say sorry as a survival reflex, not as a real apology. But that has to stop, because every time you say sorry when you mean thank you for your patience, or every time you silence your truth because you fear rejection, you send a silent message: my comfort doesn't matter, my needs are negotiable. And once a man picks up on that energy, it shifts the dynamic. It moves you out of the high value category and into the accommodating, overly available, always apologizing role where you're not admired, just tolerated. High value women don't apologize for existing. They're not rude, they're not arrogant, but they are clear. They own their space. They speak with purpose. They know that confidence isn't about volume, it's about conviction. So how do you break this habit? Start by catching yourself. Every time you go to say sorry out of habit, pause. Ask yourself, am I actually at fault? Or am I just afraid of being misunderstood? If it's not your responsibility, replace the apology with a statement of clarity or gratitude. Instead of sorry for the delay, say thank you for your patience. Instead of sorry if that sounded weird, say let me clarify what I meant. Also, do the inner work to reclaim your space. Take up more physical space when you speak. Stand tall, speak slowly and intentionally. Don't rush your words just to hurry up and be done. You have the right to be heard. You have the right to take your time, and you have the right to speak without asking for permission. Shrinking yourself doesn't make you more lovable. It just makes you easier to overlook. So from this point forward, stop apologizing for being too much. Stop downplaying your thoughts. your ideas, your presence, because the moment you stop shrinking is the moment the right man starts seeing you for who you truly are. Powerful, poised, and deeply self-assured. You don't need to be small to be loved. You need to be authentic to be valued. And that starts now with your voice, your presence, and your choice to take up space unapologetically. Let's talk about one of the most common but quietly toxic habits. Putting him first, always. Not in the sweet, loving, thoughtful way relationships sometimes require. I'm talking about when you begin to abandon yourself in order to keep a man comfortable, close, or committed. It starts subtly. You cancel your plans to make room for his schedule. You put off your goals, hobbies, even friendships, because you want to be more available for him. You stop speaking up about your needs because you're scared it might push him away. Slowly, you start measuring your day by how happy he is, instead of how fulfilled you feel. And the more you make him your priority, the more your own identity begins to fade into the background. Here's the problem. When a woman makes a man her center, she stops being the center of her own world. And men feel that shift. It doesn't make them love you more. It doesn't make them stay. In fact, it often has the opposite effect, because what men are deeply attracted to, whether they know it consciously or not, is a woman with her own gravitational pull. A woman who values herself so highly that her energy, her time, her peace are things to be earned, not assumed. But when you constantly put him first, you're sending the message that his life matters more than yours, that his time, comfort, and desires are worth sacrificing your boundaries, rest, or growth. And that's where respect starts to erode. Not out of malice, but because you've shown him with your actions that your needs are negotiable and his aren't. This dynamic is especially dangerous in the early stages of a relationship. It may feel like love or devotion, but it's often rooted in fear. Fear of being alone, fear of not being chosen, fear of not being good enough, unless you're giving 100%. So you overcompensate, you give and give and give, hoping it'll convince him to stay. But in doing so, you lose the very thing that made him drawn to you in the first place, your independence, your self-worth, your glow. When you become too available, emotionally, mentally, even physically, it starts to feel like he doesn't have to do anything to keep you. And anything that's easily accessed becomes easily overlooked. Now here's the deeper truth. Prioritizing yourself isn't selfish, it's sacred. You don't have to choose between love and self-respect. In fact, the most powerful relationships happen when you choose you first, so that the love you give someone else comes from a place of overflow, not depletion. That means keeping your plans, even when he suddenly becomes free. It means sticking to your morning routine, honoring your personal growth, showing up for your goals, even if it means saying no to him sometimes. It means being the woman who loves deeply, but never loses herself in that love. A man may not say it out loud, but he deeply respects the woman who says, I care about you, but I won't put myself on hold for you. That woman becomes the standard. That woman challenges him to step up. That woman becomes the one he chases, because she doesn't chase him. She's too busy building a life she's proud of. So ask yourself, when was the last time you chose yourself first? Even when it was uncomfortable. Are you pouring so much into him that you've stopped watering your own soul? Reclaiming your value doesn't mean pushing him away. It means showing him that loving you means loving a whole woman, not just the version who sacrifices everything to keep the peace. Let's talk about a habit that feels like love but slowly drains your power. Emotional over-dependency. This one is sneaky because it often hides under the surface of romantic connection. It sounds like I need him to feel okay. If he pulls away, I spiral. His mood affects my entire day. At first, it may seem harmless. You love him. You care about what he thinks. You naturally want to be close. But there's a line between emotional connection and emotional attachment. And when you cross it, your sense of self starts to revolve around his behavior, his approval, and his presence. And that's when you begin to lose control over your emotions and your value in his eyes. Men can feel when your happiness depends on their attention. It creates pressure, not the healthy kind that makes him want to show up more, but the heavy, suffocating kind that makes him feel like he's responsible for your entire emotional state. And most men aren't equipped for that kind of role. Not long term, especially not if it came out of nowhere. Over time, emotional over-dependency sends a message. I don't trust myself to regulate my own emotions. I need you to do it for me. And while men love being needed to a point, they deeply admire a woman who can hold her own emotionally, who can experience fear, disappointment, or anxiety without falling apart or needing him to fix it. Now let's be clear. This doesn't mean you have to be emotionally cold, detached, or never vulnerable. In fact, real strength is about feeling fully without making those feelings someone else's burden. It's about being able to say, I'm feeling insecure right now, but I know it's my work and I'm handling it. That kind of self-awareness, that's magnetic. That's high-value energy. The more emotionally grounded you are, the more safe and stable a man feels around you. And emotional safety is a rare currency. It's not about being emotionless. It's about being emotionally sovereign, able to feel, process, and respond, not react. You might notice emotional over-dependency showing up in small ways, like checking your phone every few minutes to see if he texted, or feeling anxious when you don't hear from him, assuming the worst. Maybe it's waiting on his opinion to make decisions, or needing constant reassurance that he still wants you. And listen, it's okay if you've been there. We've all been there. Emotional over-dependency often comes from childhood wounds. Maybe you had to earn love. Maybe consistency was lacking. Maybe you were taught that being chosen equals being safe. But healing that starts when you recognize your peace cannot be outsourced. You must protect it, nurture it, own it. The healthiest, most powerful relationships are built between two whole people, not two halves hoping to complete each other. When you stop needing him to be your emotional life raft, you become the woman he respects more, desires more, and feels lucky to have, because you're not in survival mode. You're in self-trust. So how do you shift out of emotional over-dependency? Start by building your emotional toolkit. Learn to pause before reacting. Journal through your fears instead of texting through them. Spend time alone to reconnect with your own rhythm, your own intuition, and most importantly, remind yourself daily that your worth does not waver based on someone else's behavior. You are allowed to want connection, but you are not required to lose your center in order to keep it. When a man sees that you're not emotionally dependent on him, but emotionally anchored in yourself, that's when he sees you as a woman he can grow with, not one he needs to constantly rescue. Let's dive into one of the most damaging habits that quietly erodes your value in a man's eyes: settling for less than you know you deserve. Now, settling doesn't always look like something dramatic. It's not just staying with a man who cheats or disrespects you. Sometimes it's way more subtle and far more dangerous. It looks like tolerating inconsistency, accepting bare minimum effort, making excuses for why he's emotionally unavailable, or why he still hasn't defined the relationship after months of vibes. It's telling yourself, at least he's not as bad as my ex, when deep down, you're starving for real connection, commitment, and respect. Here's the truth. No one wants to say out loud, the longer you stay in situations that don't meet your standards, the more those standards fade. Not because you want them to, but because you begin to normalize the gap between what you want and what you're actually getting. And the worst part, he can tell. Men can feel when a woman is settling. It shows in the way you overextend, the way you stop speaking up, the way you give more than you're receiving, just to keep the situation going. When you settle, you enter a state of silent self-abandonment. You put his potential above your reality. You hope he changes instead of requiring it. And hope without action becomes self-betrayal. Men are instinctively drawn to women who expect more, not because they're demanding or difficult, but because their self-worth is so intact. They'd rather lose a man than lose themselves. That energy, that's what inspires devotion. That's what shifts the dynamic from I'll take what I can get to I only entertain what matches my value. But here's where it gets real. If you constantly accept less than you deserve, over time, you'll start to believe that's all you're worthy of. You'll convince yourself that asking for more is too much, that boundaries are too risky, and that being alone is worse than being underloved. That's how you end up in almost relationships. One-sided love stories, emotional roller coasters, disguised as chemistry. But settling is not safety. It's stagnation. It's slowly forgetting the woman you were before you started compromising your joy for crumbs of connection. So how do you stop settling? First, get radically honest about what you truly want, not what you think you can get. Write it down. Say it out loud. Remind yourself daily that your desires are not too big. They're just not meant for small people. Then match those standards with your actions. If someone is inconsistent, don't beg for consistency. Walk. If someone avoids commitment, don't try harder to prove you're worthy. Choose someone who's ready. This is about reclaiming the version of you that once believed she could have it all. The woman who wasn't afraid to walk away, who knew silence was more powerful than chasing, who understood that settling for less doesn't make you loyal. It makes you forgettable. And make no mistake, men remember the women who don't settle, not because they played hard to get, but because they knew their worth and refused to shrink it just to be chosen. So ask yourself, where am I accepting less than I desire, just to feel temporarily loved or wanted? And more importantly, what would my life look like if I stopped negotiating with my value and started protecting it like it's sacred? Because it is. And once you stop settling, you stop surviving love and start experiencing the kind that actually honors you. So now that we've unpacked the 4 habits that slowly destroy a value in a man's eyes, let's talk about the most important part, how to shift into high value energy. Because it's not enough to just stop unhealthy habits. You have to replace them with powerful ones that radiate self-worth, inner peace, and emotional authority. High value energy isn't something you're born with. It's something you build, moment by moment, choice by choice. The first shift, validation, comes from within. Stop outsourcing your self-worth to how much attention he gives, how quickly he replies, or how much he compliments you. A high value woman doesn't need external confirmation to know her worth, because her value isn't fragile. She builds it through how she shows up for herself, the goals she sets, the boundaries she holds, the way she speaks to herself when no one is watching. That inner confidence becomes magnetic. It changes the room you walk into. It changes how people treat you. Because when you treat yourself like you matter, others fall in line. Second, you must lead with self-respect, not fear. A lot of low-value energy comes from trying to avoid loss. You stay quiet to avoid conflict. You overgive to avoid abandonment. But here's the truth. Fear-driven love isn't love. It's survival. High-value women don't fear losing someone who can't meet their needs. They fear losing themselves in the process of trying to hold on to them. The shift happens when you start choosing discomfort over disrespect. When you walk away not because you don't care, but because you care too much to stay where you're not seen, valued, or chosen in the way you deserve. Third, get obsessed with your own life. Nothing is more attractive than a woman who wakes up excited about her future, with or without a man. High value energy comes from fulfillment, not fixation. Pour into your passions, expand your mind, surround yourself with people who pour into you, not drain you. Because when your world is full, love becomes an addition, not a lifeline. Fourth, master emotional regulation. This doesn't mean pretending everything's okay. It means being able to sit with discomfort without losing your power. High-value women know how to feel without falling apart. They pause before reacting. They don't chase closure. They create it. They don't beg for attention. They attract it by being so in tune with themselves that they become a safe space in a chaotic world. Next, embody unshakable boundaries, not walls, but clear, kind, firm lines that protect your time, energy, and emotional clarity. Boundaries say, I love myself enough to walk away from what doesn't align. And that love, it sets the tone. Men respect women who are clear, who say no with grace, who don't make threats, but who take action when needed. Finally, remember this. High-value energy is a daily decision. It's not about being perfect. It's about constantly checking in with yourself and asking, am I honoring or abandoning myself right now? That single question, asked consistently, will change everything. Because when you embody high-value energy, you don't need to chase love. You become the standard. You become the mirror that reflects what a man is or isn't ready for. And most importantly, you become the woman who would rather be alone than in a relationship that costs her peace, power, or purpose. This shift starts now. With one choice, one boundary, one moment of radical self-respect. You're not just worthy of love, you're worthy of the kind of love that matches the woman you're becoming. So don't lower your value to be seen. Rise so high They have to elevate just to reach you. So let's bring this full circle. We've covered 4 habits that quietly but powerfully drain your value in a man's eyes. Over-apologizing, prioritizing him over yourself, emotional over-dependency, and settling for less than you deserve. And if any of those habits felt a little too familiar, I want you to know something. You're not broken, you're waking up. Because awareness is the beginning of transformation. And you don't need to be ashamed of how you've loved in the past. You just need to start loving yourself with the same loyalty, effort, and tenderness you've been giving everyone else. Now is the time to take your power back. Taking your power back doesn't mean becoming cold or closed off. It doesn't mean putting up walls or playing games. Real power is quiet. It's graceful. It's the calm certainty of knowing who you are and what you bring to the table. So much so that you no longer need to perform for connection or prove your worth. It means releasing the belief that love has to be earned through suffering, silence, or sacrifice. That you have to lose yourself to keep someone. That being chosen by a man is you are the prize. You've always been the prize. But when you forget that, when you shrink, settle, or stretch yourself beyond your limits, just to be seen, you send a message that your love can be accessed at a discount. And let's be clear, a discounted version of you is never going to attract the kind of love that honors the full version of you. So this is your invitation, not just to stop the habits that dim your value, but to rewrite your entire standard. From this moment on, your new baseline becomes, I don't apologize for taking up space. I don't chase. I attract. I don't beg to be understood. I speak with clarity and let alignment do the rest. I don't overextend myself to be loved. I meet love where it meets me, with mutual energy, effort, and respect. You shift from needing to be chosen to choosing yourself over and over again. And when you make that shift, everything around you changes. Men start to approach you differently. You become more discerning, more at peace, more magnetic. Why? Because you've stopped giving your power away. You've stopped living on emotional autopilot. You've stopped making temporary moments feel like forever connections. You begin walking in a kind of self-trust that doesn't need to be loud to be felt. And trust me, men feel it. They can sense when a woman is rooted, calm and whole on her own.